Therapy dogs do wonders for lonely nursing home residents, children battling cancer, and law enforcement and service personnel keeping us safe. Dana Provost joins the show to talk about her years of experience with Greyhounds as therapy dogs. Next on Greyhound Nation. This is Greyhound Nation, episode 54, recorded May 24th, 2026. Greyhounds as therapy dogs with Dana Provost. Greyhound Nation is a podcast for Greyhound enthusiasts produced by Greyhound enthusiasts. To learn more about our show and its hosts, visit our website at greyhoundnation.dog. That's greyhoundnation.dog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Greyhound Nation podcast. I'm Michael Burns. Now, here's your host, John Parker.
Thanks, Michael, and welcome back, Greyhound lovers. Our guest for this episode is Dana Provost from Las Vegas, Nevada, and she's here to talk a little bit about Greyhounds as therapy dogs. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Thank you, John and Michael.
We're glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about your, to begin at the beginning, tell us a little bit about your Greyhound journey when you adopted your first Greyhound and what you've done in Greyhound since then.
Well, about 34 years ago, give or take a year or two, I adopted my first Greyhound. And how that ended up happening was I had schnauzers and I wanted a big dog. And I was going through this animal rescue magazine and saw a Greyhound curled up with a little kid. And I was like, oh my God, that's the kind of dog I want, a really nice, cuddly dog. So I called the adoption group. It was a Greyhound Adoption Center out of San Diego. And they sent me an application. And in about a month, I went through a phone interview because they didn't have any representatives here in Las Vegas. And so I, did the app, and the dog came. They brought him to my house and stayed with me throughout the day because Greyhounds are different as far as coming off the track, and I had just rescued schnauzers through adoption groups, but being a big dog, I needed to understand what that was all about. So his name was Stealth, and he was a phenomenal dog. He had done a lot of he had hit a lot of milestones, and one of them was to become the first Greyhound therapy dog in his breed in Nevada. So how that came to be was I took him to the vets, and the vet's wife was there, and her dog was a therapy dog. And she looked at Stealth and she says, my goodness, he'd be an excellent therapy dog. And I says, well, what do you mean? I didn't even know what that was. So she went ahead and explained it. You go through training, and actually you have to train your own dog. There are some groups that do training, but that is, I got with her rescue. There was a tester observer. You go through as a team. The dog has to sit and stay and come and do basic obedience, basically. So in the meantime, 6 months later, he became a therapy dog, and I became an adoption rep for Las Vegas for our Greyhound group. So, and then that just led me on to, if there was relinquishments, I ended up being a foster fail. And so from there on, I started the therapy dog chain. Every one of my Greyhounds, 15 of them, past and present, have been therapy dogs.
That's great. That's wonderful. Let's now that we've raised the therapy dog history. Let's for our listeners and viewers, tell us a little bit about the difference between a therapy dog, a service dog, an emotional support dog. How are those differentiated?
Well, emotional support dogs, they end up being classified under the service dog category. Service dogs, they go through, now emotional support dogs, I don't believe go through this. I'm not sure exactly, but they are considered service dogs because they provide a service to the human, and it's in the support part. Service dogs normally go through a certain amount of testing and for what they are going to provide, what service, whether it's, oh, your blood pressure's getting high, nudging you, picking stuff up off the floor if you can't, you can't do it yourself, that type of thing. That's what a service dog does. It accompanies you everywhere. There are service dogs and canine therapy dogs that have been tested as therapy dogs so that the owner can actually bring their dog as a service dog, but into a facility to be a canine therapy dog, certified. So that's the difference. There is the service dog goes through a rigorous evaluations and stuff, whereas we go through 3 observations as a team and doing certain tests, and we're being observed and from head to toe, and then the handler, me, will take a test, and we have to take a written test. And then after the 3rd observation, sometimes some dogs need 4th observation because they're like on the borderline of not passing. They go to the 4th one. But all of my Greyhounds have been self-trained. I train them. Most of them have all raced, and so they have that basic obedience down pat. And it's just making sure that they'll do it on command in front of an observer or a teacher or trainer.
So it sounds like the big difference is service dogs help their owner and therapy dogs help people other than the owner.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Now, when you, having gotten interested in Greyhounds as therapy dogs, have you always, from maybe your first or second one, have you always selected what Greyhounds you adopted by first giving them a little bit of a screening to assess their potential for being a good therapy dog?
Nope. The only thing is they ended up either a foster fail or since I was an adoption rep, I would go. I would have an adoption here, and I had several times somebody either relinquish their Greyhound because they were moving or something, and instead of bringing the dog back to the kennel for reevaluation, I would foster it and then end up keeping it. I've had up to 5 Greyhounds several times.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that sometimes people change their mind and it's already set its course. And so I would ask the profiler, do you think that dog would inserted into my family would be okay? And he'd say, oh yeah, most definitely. So I said, okay, bring her on, or keep coming. I'll come and visit, I'll come and get her. So that's how I've gotten them. I don't pre-screen them. I never have. they've all just fell into that role. And the first Greyhound was my Greyhound, and then I became a tester observer for our group, Alliance of Therapy Dogs. I am not right now, but that gave me kind of the behind the scenes of what a Greyhound needed to do, because there was other people that I adopted to that had Greyhounds. They said, I'd like to do that. And I say, well, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I says, just think, it's not that you're just showing off your dog. You're working with your dog as a team. It's a team thing. And I couldn't get that through. Some people would just want to go there to show their dogs off, and that's not the program. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't, I say, I just wouldn't suggest that you go through with this.
Right.
So
What are some of the characteristic personalities that of Greyhounds that give you an idea that they'll make a really good therapy dog?
their outgoingness. I've had shy Greyhounds, like I have my 13-year-old that I have right now. I just retired her from therapy because it it was just too hard for her to keep standing. Like, we visit a local high school, and it was just too long for her to meet and greet the children. And she's not one to, like, sit as a sphinx on the floor or even go down, and then she starts panting, and it just isn't the way. But the friendliness, even a shy Greyhound wants that attention. And she was one that was very, very shy, to the point where she'd lay down and get on her back, and she'd start screaming if you put a
Mm-hmm.
leash on her. So she got through that, got through the test, and she did fine. She loved children. She loved the elderly. And so I would say Greyhounds are perfect. Greyhounds are perfect in any way, shape, or form. They just, they love to be handled because of the track. All their track that they've had at the track, the touching, and the looking over, and of the vets, and the constant working with the trainer, and this and that. The crowds. I mean, I had a Greyhound that did fashion shows. She was a therapy dog, but she'd get on there and she'd just see the crowd, and her tail would just go in a helicopter. I mean, she'd prance on that stage like nobody's business. So that's what and Greyhounds are perfect. They can go up to a hospital bed. They're a perfect, size.
Yeah.
You don't have to put them on the bed. You can teach them to, like, if there's a side chair, to stand, to put their front paws on the chair and then lean over. I had a Greyhound that he was just phenomenal. He would put his head we did hospice, and he'd put his head on the person that was in comatose state, and he put his head on their hand, and he'd just nudge it. He wouldn't lick it or anything, because they're taught not to lick. Most Greyhounds aren't lickers anyway, but you could tell them no, and they understand that that's not what they do.
Yeah.
But so they're just perfect. That's all I can say, is they're just perfect
Is food
for
motivation
this.
an important characteristic for a Greyhound as a therapy dog?
No, because we're taught not, a lot of the, like, if we go into elderly wants to share their piece of bread, or they want to share this, or there's, like, droppings on the floor. They are absolutely trained not to pick up stuff on the floor, go into waste baskets, or take anything from a patient's hand because
Yeah.
being certified under Alliance of Therapy Dogs, you're given, uh, they're covered. I'm covered, so is the dog covered if the dog gets hurt in a facility or if I get hurt in a facility. But the opposite is true, where as if the dog, the elderly are very thin skinned, and all it takes is a dog's tooth to hit somebody that's on heart medication and they start bleeding. And then that's an incident, and that can be, because it's a litigious society, it can be uh, a lawsuit, So
Yeah. Yeah.
they're taught not to lick. They're taught not to, and I don't want to say taught because they're kind of, if they, if you, they're very, they know the word no. They
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
the word no. And I sometimes don't use no. I'll just do a sound, and they know what that sound means.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because other people say something and then they're saying, "What did I do wrong?" If they're saying no. So that's why I give them and suggest it to other people, give them a sound, and then they
Yeah.
know what that means. No.
What about the really super exuberant greyhound, the one that's the pet me, I'll jump all over you, I love you, and just it's kind of overwhelming. What are they ruled out as therapy dogs, or can you train that away?
I have my Greyhound Deerhound is like that. She just loves people and she's a licker, but she's 11 now. But I trained her to be a therapy dog. You could start at 1 years old to test, and I tested her at 1, and she's been doing it for 11 years, and not once did she do that in a facility. It's
Yeah.
like they know. I put a vest on them, and it's like they know that they're working.
Mm-hmm.
They're working dogs, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so this gives them a purpose, and that purpose is to go in and act respectfully, and they do it.
Yeah. Well, take us through kind of soup to nuts the training regimen that you start with, from day one, and then just take us through until they're certified. What are you teaching? What's the frequency of the repetition? Things like that.
Well, I always told people when I was a tester observer that the Greyhound pretty much comes to you with basic obedience. But I recently adopted a new Greyhound, and she never raced, so she never had that. And she had like 4 to 5 years that she just could do anything because she didn't race, and I don't know what she was doing, but maybe playing a lot. I don't know. She was over in Australia, um, so she, I knew, needed the basic obedience, and I have a trainer, and that's what I suggest to other Greyhound people if they've got a dog where they don't feel comfortable. Like I said, I've had 15 that I've gone through. I know exactly what you need to go through. So I start working them as soon as they get in the household, and I started working her, and then I started taking her to a basic obedience training session with other dogs, because a lot of times um, greyhounds can't be around other dogs. That's another no. Uh, this because you sometimes you do things as group. A group of us will be going to next week to Crime Con, which is a convention um, at Caesar's Palace, and it's all to do with criminal crimes, and they're having speakers and everything. And so we're going there for the victims to be, solace for the victims. And there'll be a team of us. And if you don't have a dog that doesn't like little dogs, some greyhounds don't like little dogs and never will like little dogs. And or some tolerate them, just don't get them in their face. And other canine therapy team members know that you can't, part of the test is you can't go nose to nose and the dogs can't smell each other's butts. That is a no-no. You have to be 5 feet away from the other dog. So that, if it's tolerable for your greyhound to be around that, that's fine. But if it's not, and so that's what I wanted to test Shiraz on. Was she tolerable with little dogs? How did she react around little dogs? And this training set that. And another thing is how she was going to take the obedience. I mean, she flew through it. I mean, but you work with them every day. I worked with her for 6 weeks every day. And every week we had something else we had to add to the agenda. And now she's an intermediate. But she's also went through Canine Good Citizen. The group that I'm with, Courtroom Critters, they have to have that extra. You don't have to, as a certified therapy dog, to go into other facilities. But the local group that I'm going to Crime Con with and stuff, they do that. So they have to have that extra certification. So she passed that with flying colors after her 6 weeks that. And then that leads you up to the test. And the test is 3 observations and 3 different facilities. What they do is they observe, is your dog nervous? Is your dog friendly? Does your dog go up to a wheelchair? If there's calamity, sometimes there's, there are different codes and they're ringing bells. And, if you're in a skilled nursing facility, which is what she was tested on, it was in a skilled nursing. They start slow. We go into lows and just walk up to people and see how people react and how she reacts to people, or how the dog reacts to people. And then in skilled nursing, of course, it's all going up to the bed and not interested in stuff on the floor and not going into the waste baskets and stuff. So that's all observed. And then I'm given a written test to go through the procedures, the policies. You have to have a 4-foot leash. You can go down to a 2-foot leash. You can't use certain collars like, prong collars and stuff like that, which none of those collars we ever would do on a greyhound anyway. So that stuff is just nothing. And see how she walks on leash or the dog walks on leash and stuff. So and that then goes to the Alliance of Therapy Dogs, the group that I'm with. And then they go through the paperwork and they say yay or nay. And then you pay your yearly membership fee for that. And then that covers the dog for their license. Or certification, and the insurance covering them if there's an incident.
And is the certification for the life of the dog, or does it have to renew?
Every year. Every year. If you let that lapse, because you have to, and they're very generous with that, because I go to two different places twice a month. They only require you to take your dog every 3 months one time. And it's so basically that's 4 times a year to stay. Otherwise, if you relinquish your membership that way, and then you have to retake the test and all of that. But every year, like my membership just came up due in July. And so every year in July, the dog has to have fecal tests because you also have to have a health certificate that the dog has no hookworm or which is sometimes an issue with greyhounds. All of my ex-racing greyhounds always had hookworm. So you can't even test them before you can get rid of that and make sure it's done and that they come with a negative fecal. That and that they're healthy and that they have all their shots. And if you have city licensing, they have to be city licensed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that is a prerequisite before you even start testing.
Some greyhounds are not comfortable walking across smooth
Different
or
floors.
slick floors, tile floors.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
encounter that in a lot of the facilities you visit. What do you
Yes.
do about that?
Well, if anybody knows their greyhound, they would they just wouldn't, because nothing is ever carpeted. The only thing that I found that was carpeted was like senior living, and where they bring the seniors into a living room and it's carpeted. We did reading to Rover, which was carpeted. It was a church and it was carpeted. But very seldom the other facilities are carpeted. So you have to know your greyhound again. If that doesn't happen, I mean, if that's what the dog is scared of, I mean, you could put boots on the dog, but a lot of times they don't like wearing boots either.
Yeah.
But I do have a story of my first greyhound worked with a little gal that was and this will come up with the flooring issue, because none of my other greyhounds have had an issue with the flooring. The one that I just put that I just retired, she had problems with the flooring in the high school, so I just knew it was time, because their rear ends start melting.
Yeah.
From lumbosacral disease. So anyway, Stealth worked, and he was like, I want to say about 12 years old. He was still doing a really good job. He was alert and everything. And this little girl had it was a drug deal that had gone bad. And the guy came, and she was babysitting her little sister, and ended up getting stabbed, and the guy severed her spinal in her back, her spinal nerve. And so she ended up losing her legs. And we were called by the hospital we were visiting. We were on their come right away list. And we got there, and she was really happy to see the dog. She ended up going to a rehab center that we visit. That hospital would always send to this rehab center. She was learning the wheelchair, and Stealth would walk next to her real slow and do the wheelchair. Little did I know that he was getting so weak that I ended up getting him a wheelchair. And I brought it to the facility, and this little girl started telling her, she'd go up a little bit, and then she'd say, Stealth, come, Stealth, come, Stealth. So she was like training him to use his wheelchair. And it was the most heartwarming thing you'd ever seen.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, that's great.
So you get those. I mean, greyhounds just have this sixth sense. My first greyhound was like, I say he saved me, and that's why going into therapy with him, I mean, I was fearful of, I was a little girl, I was always in hospitals, and I had a fear of hospitals, and I would go in with him and everything was okay. And I mean, he read the room, and he, you know, I have another greyhound that has since passed. um, there was a shooting of a couple um, policemen. And so we went to the substation and we worked with a psychiatrist, and we worked in a closed room with the policemen's people that they had worked with. And so it was a real serene thing of them remembering and going through things. And she, they didn't want her on leash. And so, since it was a closed room, it was safe. And so I unleashed her, and she went to everybody in the circle and put her head on everybody's lap. And then she came back to me, and then she centered in the room, center of the room, and she just laid down on her side. And when somebody started, crying and talking, she got up and went right to that person. And I mean, this is self-taught. The Greyhound was doing, Rousseau was doing this. And then she finally, when it was over, she centered and went right to the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist then said, little do you know, but this dog has given you uh, serotonin or whatever, lowered your blood pressure by just being there, And she knows that I need her now. I have taken in all of what you've had to say. She knows I need her now. And she just put her head in her lap. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I had another greyhound that went into hospice, and he helped a lady cross over. I didn't know at the time this was happening, but just watching him and he was nudging the woman and looking at her, and then looking up and nudging the woman's hand, looking up. And then his tail was wagging the whole time like he was talking to her, and she was completely comatose. And he backed away, and then let him, says, okay, it's time to go. And when we checked out, the nurse was crying, and she said, that lady died. She has had no visitors, and that lady died with Dior in the room. She passed away.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's extremely, we've had shootings. We had the October 1st shooting, and we went on emergency on that. Like I said, the shooting of our UNLV university, the students, the faculty were shot, and we went to the vigil and stayed there for hours at end with the people coming around us and just hugging on the dog. They just they're big, so they're huggable,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they take that all in. But greyhounds, somehow they have that mysterious capability of bringing in, knowing what your feelings are. And I've had it with every one of my greyhounds. And people that have had them, I mean, like I said, I have a Podenco from Spain, and I don't get that from him. I don't get that, what I get from my greyhounds.
Yeah.
That support, that emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, they really
they
are.
could
They're
really
intuitive,
could be
aren't
an
they?
emotional support dog. Yes. Yeah, they are. I mean, because like I said, I've had schnauzers and stuff, and this, my first Greyhound just knocked my socks off. He
Yeah,
was amazing.
yeah. Well,
He's
I mean, it
amazing.
sounds like you've covered the waterfront in the facilities you cover and you take dogs to. Tell us a little bit about the kind of the typical visit uh, to a nursing home or a children's hospital, that sort of thing. How does that take us through that? What that's like?
Okay, right now the facilities that we go to is a home that has been changed over or redone to hold seniors that are not ready for hospice, but um, are not rehabilitating. They're like in between a hospital and hospice, and so they can be there forever, or you can go there and they are not there. And then we go to the high school, and the high school, those kids, I I just opened my eyes about high school students. These kids are amazing. I put on. They kept saying, "Are your dogs on Instagram? Do you have your dogs on Instagram?" And that made me think because one of the other therapy dogs has its own Instagram. She says, "Oh, it's real easy. Get it on." So the Gray Fab 3 are on Instagram, and we post pictures of their visits at not the nursing home or but the high school. There's kids that say, "Oh yeah, put us on. We're gonna post us. We're gonna post us." And I always dress up the dogs. They just know. They go, "Oh, that's the dog that wore the bonnet," and "Oh, that's Miss Dior." And so now they're like celebrities. They have their own little Instagram account, and they go in there, and it was finals week. We went last week, and we go early in the morning when the kids are first coming in, and they're just scared. They're gonna have to do a test, um, and so it's all there's guys, there's girls, there's faculty, there's the principal. They all are so appreciative. Um, they've got their own little school ID. They're staffed. And that the kids just adore. The kids just adore that. And and so we tour some of the classrooms if we have extra time. We'll go into disability classrooms that they have in the high school, or we'll visit other rooms that will take a break and let us come in, and they'll pet the dog. But most of the time, it's either lunches or right before school. And then if we have time, we go into the see the children with disability, and they're reactive. The disability kids, the teachers are just amazed sometimes how reactive they are to the dogs, and it's a good reaction. It's not bad,
Yeah.
and they just say, "Will you come back? Will you come back?" They just beg you to come back. And the nursing home is a little bit quiet, and it's not as long because some are not are sleeping, some are not verbal, uh, some will talk but very negatively. It's really not towards the dog but at life itself.
Yeah.
There'll be a younger person there that is bedridden, and they'll she's very negative, and that's real hard because it's you know you have to be careful with what you say.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, you can't ask them how they're feeling. You can't ask them how their day is going. You have to let them speak to you.
Yeah.
You cannot question them. So there's a duty to the person, that's you're a team, not only the dog, but you know you're liable as well. So and the kids just love us coming in. They just It's just fun. They'll say, "Oh, can you come to the homecoming game?" You know, because they'll have like posters up, and I'll see the next time I come that that their dance is going to be a certain theme. Well, I dressed the dogs up as that theme. Like one, it was the Roaring Twenties, so I dressed her up as a flapper girl, and they just, let me take a picture. I want to take a picture. And the Easter time, before the Easter break, I always put their Easter bonnet on, and then with summer coming, they wear their sunglasses and their visor, and so
When
and
you're with
they
when
love
you're with
that.
the high school students, do you feel like you're maybe got some future Greyhound adopters there?
Well, a lot of them, they start talking about their dogs that they
Huh.
have. And a lot
Huh.
of them have their dogs, and they even sometimes have cats. And of course, the dog that's part Greyhound and part Deerhound, she smells those cats right away. She's just like all over them. And they'll say, "Oh, she smells my cats," and stuff. And I said, "She sure does." But some, if they even have the little guys, they'll have the little greyhounds. But I've not met one that has had a greyhound. But they've had big dogs. Some of them have the pit bulls and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So, but they are real readily to talk about their dogs and say, "Oh, I wish I could bring my dog to school," and stuff. I says,
It,
"Well, they have to go through tests and stuff." "Oh, really?" I says, "Yeah, this vest." And then I tell them, what they have to do. "Oh, well, I guess mine couldn't come then. It jumps too much," or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. If
Yeah.
you have somebody express an interest in adopting a Greyhound, do you have business cards or literature there that you can hand out to them and take home, let their parents see that sort of thing?
I got after Debbie for that. I says, "Debbie, I need some of those cards. I need some cards."
Yeah,
And so she says they're on their way. But what I do is, they can contact. I have a facilities person that's there. He does the scheduling, and he does all the fun stuff with the kids, with starting the dances, and events coordinator is what I kind of, but he teaches as well. And he, like I said, he's made badges. And then what he did was at the beginning, because we've been going there for 3 years, but at the beginning, he actually made uh, plastic plate placards, like little business card like things, with their picture on it, with their Instagram account on it. And so the kids were like, "Oh, I want one." And so now I made stickers, and they're like, "Oh, I want a sticker. I want a sticker. Do you have a sticker for her?" Or so, at least we're handing out something. And now at the Crime Con, they actually made poker chips with the dog that you're bringing, and the having the Instagram account on it, and to hand out. But I'm hoping I get the cards by that time as well, because
yeah,
you're going to have a lot of people nationally, and the Greyhound Network works nationally. So that would be really great. But, there's like Nancy Grace. There's just a lot of heavy hitters, newscasters and stuff that will be talking at the Crime Con. So,
yeah. That's great.
uh, so it'll be very visible, and I'll be
Yeah.
bringing Shiraz. This is her big debut, her first gig.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, in your nursing homes, assisted living, children's hospital visits, do you typically visit everyone, or do you just visit patients or residents that have signed up, so to speak, to have visits from the therapy Greyhounds?
That's a really good question. Um, in skilled nursing, they is like a hospital, and in hospitals it's the same way. They have normally when you go through, like if you do a hospital, I started out at a hospital and then the rehab center when I first started out with Stealth, and I went through an 8 hour class, and you learn the different codes, code blue, code this, code that. You learn the hazardous materials, the waste, the signs, and you're tested on it at the end of the day. So you really, as a volunteer, still, it's not a paid position. So you're a volunteer. You still have to go through that. So you go some places you have to go to the nursing station and say, what rooms can I go to? And in the skilled nursing, they actually had up there that the people, it was hazardous. You would have to go in, which was the visitors would have to go in with a suit on. And that's absolutely no for us because we're not going to suit up the dog or anything. So we stay out of those rooms. And sometimes every room is like that. I mean, this last one we did, we visited 2 rooms out of 2 wings, and that's because they were all under hazardous infectious disease pointed out, and the hospitals are the same way. Hospice, we could go into every room, but our training was 3 8-hour Saturdays, and we went through everything. Again, all the codes, what's the sign of death, the different stages, mourning, because you're not actually visiting patients. A lot of times the families are in there, and you have to really respect, and sometimes they'll say, no, we don't want to visit, no, or yes, bring them in. We want to see the dog. So there, it's like you can go into every room, but if you're told no, then you just back out.
Yeah. When you go in to a older person's room, what's the typical duration of a visit? How long do you stay?
Well, at the place they have like only 8 residents at one time, and a lot of times it'll be down to 4. And so you go in there, and if you just talk to them, if they can't talk back, because a dog, you can show them the head, and put the dog's face on the bed, and sometimes you can lift the person's arm or hand and let them feel the dog's head. All of them want to see the dog. We're not told we can't go into any of those rooms. We can go into them. Only time we can't is if the nurse is in there changing beds or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's pretty obvious. But it's for the older people, it's not very long. It's probably 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are not verbal, and
right.
You can't hold a conversation, and they can't speak to you, or they're sleeping, and then you just don't bother them. If they're sleeping, you just let them sleep.
Do you visit any children's hospitals?
I did at the beginning. We had UMC, our University Medical Center, where I started, and we had there was the AIDS wards. That hospital had the skilled nursing in it. It also had the children's. It had the emergency and what's that? Urgent care. Not urgent care, but it's like that, urgent care. It's been a while since I did that. And so we did visit the children. We have tried to get into McDonald's, the Ronald McDonald homes, and for some reason they don't want to have people in those homes. So I mean dogs or whatever in the
Yeah.
homes. So again, I think it's an infectious disease. They're taking treatment and stuff, and they don't want to weaken just in case. The dogs have to be clean, groomed, every time you go in there, combed and everything, teeth brushed. I mean, you have to upkeep the dog, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's one of the reasons they deter us from coming to see them. So,
If you're in a
but we
children's
did.
hospital, if you're in a children's hospital and the child patient expresses some fear or discomfort with the dog, do you try to allay that, or do you just back away, or what? How do you handle that situation?
That most of the time in a children's hospital, the we don't really run into that because the family's there, the mother or the father's there, and they'll go, oh no, and they'll put up their hand and they'll go, oh no, or they'll go, oh yeah, come on in.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we kind of ask permission before we walk into a room with a child that can't say for themselves, what they want. The parent always knows.
Yeah.
And so, and then if we meet them in the hall, the kids were always receptive to the dogs, the big ones especially.
Yeah.
The little guys. Anything under 15 pounds, I think, can come on a bed. But I never had that issue because my guys are always big, and they never attempted to. All these years, they jump on my bed all the time, and not once have they ever tried to jump on a patient's bed. And I was amazed at that. I thought at one time I would have to put my arm up real quick or something, but I never had to do that. They know when they got that, they just started working. It was just an amazing thing. They knew. I don't know. I had one dog that could not do hospice. We get into the facility, and she'd freeze. She would just freeze. It was like she'd go nowhere, so we'd have to leave.
Yeah.
And then I'd have them where some would go into the one room, but stop at one room and not go in. Absolutely not. I'm not going in there.
Yeah.
So you have to know your dog. You have to know your
absolutely.
dog. You're one there. And
Do you find that any of them ever try to put their front paws up on the bed?
Nope.
Don't even do that.
They don't even do that. They just put their head. They
Yeah.
just put their head there. And
Right.
then they I've always trained them to if there was a chair there, that they could do that at the chair, but not on the bed.
Yeah.
And the beds are a little bit higher than a normal person's bed, at home.
Yeah.
They are a bit higher, and so they're about the level of their head. So on those type of floors, I think that's what stops them because of the slippery floors.
Yeah.
They won't have good footing to get, because they didn't even like being on a chair, putting their front feet on the chair.
Yeah.
And so I never forced them to do that. I just showed them that it's an option if they wanted to do it, but they didn't. They didn't. They would sit and shake to show the patient they knew how to shake,
Yeah.
and and bow. I had one that would bow on command. They do that stretch. I kept saying bow when she'd do that stretch. So finally I would just go bow, and she'd go, okay, I'm going down for my stretch. And so everybody, I had one that you would go bang, bang, and she'd roll over and play dead. Yeah. She was the glamour girl. She was the one that did all the fashion shows. So
Yeah.
we did a vaudeville little dance one time, and we ended up with me telling her bang bang, and she just played dead. So yeah, you get to have fun with them.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question. We know what the elderly, the children, the high school students get out of it. What do the Greyhounds get out of it?
Lots of pets.
Yeah, yeah.
Lots of pets, a lot of notoriety. They know what a camera is. They know what a phone is, man.
Right.
They just they just pose. Strike a pose, they do it.
Do they know when you're getting ready to take one or two out for a therapy session, do they know the cues at home, when a certain leash comes out?
Yep.
Or that
Yep.
sort of thing, and they get excited?
Mm-hmm. Yep. The one, especially the leash, but what shows them, like the new one, I started putting just a regular vest on her to hold her leash, so she could understand that there's times when she has that on that she'll be working and not having a horse around. And for the first couple of times, I would get that out and she would like be all over, and me trying to buckle it, and she was like, and I was like, stop, just stop. And then and I said, sit. And so every time I bring that out now, she gets excited, but she sees me going to put it on. She sits,
Yeah.
and she's as still as can be, because she knows that she's going to go,
Yeah.
but she has to behave herself before she does that.
Yeah.
Gets to
Well,
do
they do.
that.
They definitely do pick up on the cues, whether it's in their racing life. I know that in our lure coursing, when they see the kit coming out, they know what's happening, and that's when they get excited. So certainly Greyhounds get that conditioning, and they know what they enjoy. And then when they see the accoutrement of whatever the activity is coming out, they get excited, and they know they're going to go out and do a little have a little fun.
My first Greyhound, I worked at a law office where they had border collies, and you could bring your dog in. My first two Greyhounds, Stealth and Allie, we could do therapy together as a team, but about 10 years after that, they stopped you being where they were hooked together, harnessed together.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't do them. You could only take one at a time. But I'd bring one in, and they had fly ball, and they said, "Oh yeah, your dog runs really fast. We'd love to have him on the team." And I was like, "Well, what does he have to do?" "Oh, he has to jump over these hurdles and then touch a backboard and then spring-loaded tennis ball comes in their mouth, and then they have to turn around and come back really fast." And I was like, "Seriously, you think he can do that?" But I said, "Well, I'll try." But see, he was a phenomenon. Like I said, I threw a tennis ball, and he'd bring it back to me. How many Greyhounds bring back a ball? They'll chase it, but they won't bring it back.
Right.
He brought it back instantly. I didn't even ask him to. He brought it back. I got him when he was 2 years old, and he had come off the Yuma track. So I said, "Okay, let's try." And this is was a training. I says, well, he can't be off leash. This is an open area. And they said, oh, we'll put the 6 foot the training leash on him. So they did.
Yeah.
And they said, now walk with him and go over it. He jumped over him. And then they showed him how to do the ball. And then he'd do that. And then push comes to shove, that dog ended up being fifth of all North America and Canada in his breed classification under NAFA, which is the National American Fly Ball League,
Yeah.
and association or whatever. And he went and trained with the Greyhound that was in first place down in Texas. And I retired him when he was 11. He started this at 8 years old.
Yeah.
And he did that.
Well, there
And did
certainly
his
are
canine
natural
therapies.
athletes. Yeah.
So he loved it.
Let's let me ask you about kind of starting on the opposite end of the age range from the retired racer. Let's say somebody's acquired a Greyhound puppy, and they one of their goals for the puppy is to at some point go and have be a therapy dog. At what age would you recommend they begin the training for that?
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately, because they can start being tested and observed at 1 year old.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to have that basic obedience. So
Right.
I would say either go to a trainer. If you can't do it yourself, I wanted to make sure that Shiraz was, I wanted to see how she was around other dogs. I knew that I could probably train her at home, since I've had so many other ones that have been therapy dogs. But I just wanted her to have that basic obedience. And so that's what I would recommend. If you've got a puppy, and it's steering them in the right direction anyway, because at the track and training, they're training them to not be all over the place. They're training them to do something, and this gives them a job. Because as I've never had a puppy, and as I hear, they can be pretty rambunctious. So, and like to get into trouble and everything. And this is the way to start them to have good manners.
Yeah.
I believe every dog needs to have good manners.
Absolutely.
That you're the person. You can love your dog to death, but not be top dog, and that will get you into trouble.
Yeah.
That'll get you into trouble. You have to be the top dog, and they have to respect that.
So the youngest they can be to be certified is a year old.
Year old. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And do you find that most facilities that you visit, whether it's a high school, a nursing home, an assisted living, do they typically require the certification before they allow you in the facility? Yeah.
Yeah. You're given your membership. And just like I said with courtroom critters, I have to show that I'm a member of the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. There's other therapy programs throughout the United States. And you have to show that, so that they can take a picture of that and have it on file. And most of the time that's all they need. But this courtroom critters, once I retire, this is the next leg I want to get into, is courtroom critters actually are starting programs where we go in, and since I've worked in a law office for 30 some odd years, that you go into the courtrooms with the victim or with whoever. A lot of times it's children. And you work with the attorney, the judge, the child, the child's guardian, parent, whatever, so that the dog can go into the courtroom. So when they're speaking, they're not afraid. They're not, they're calm. The dog is there, and they've done that on. And then you go through training as well in courtroom settings, pretend courtroom settings. We have a law school at our university, and so that's where they do that type of training, and then you get a certificate of that. But I also have to have the Canine Good Citizen for the courtroom critters, which all my dogs have. My dogs had to go through that at like 11 years old. They had to go through that, and the trainer that was testing them said, "Why are they going through this at this age?" And I said, "Well, it's one of the prerequisites of this organization that I'm in with." So yeah, that basically you have to show that it's documentation that they have on file, because if there are incident reports that are on our website that we have to pull in case of an incident, and they have to know that that dog is clean, that it's gone through all its testing, that it's gone through its veterinarian care, that it's licensed, and not some Tom, Dick, and Harry dog coming in and pretending it is a therapy dog.
Let's
When
talk a
it's
little
not.
bit about getting started from scratch. Say there's an adoption group that doesn't have a therapy program, but they've got 2 or 3 adopters and volunteers that want to start one. What should they do to get that commenced and get started with a therapy program with their greyhounds?
Well, that's a big task. We have several in town. One does here in Las Vegas. That's all they do. They don't do adoptions. They exclusively train therapy dogs. They're not at the highest level as the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. They're a little bit more relaxed, and so they can only go in certain facilities um, with their certificate. Um, and and so adoption groups really would have to go to a national group, or if they had a local group that was just specified doing therapy, like we've got Michael's Angel's Paws, and they do the test, they do the training with you, and then they give you the certification. So I've not known any. That's the biggest task to be able to incorporate that, and
Yeah.
I've not heard of anybody doing that
Does the
because you have
Alliance
the
of Therapy
national groups.
Does the Alliance of Therapy Dogs have a website and a network where they can help a group of people that might want to take their greyhounds through the training for therapy dogs and get them lined up, so to speak, with the facility?
Yes, they have. They have on their website. That's where if you're a member, you go on there to log your visits, because that's another thing. You have to log your visits on the website to keep your membership. You have to you go on there. It shows you what exactly they have the itemized list of what you and your dog need to go through. It gives you the application, because there's an application form, just like applying for a Greyhound. And in there has the health certificate you have to take to the dog, and then they're given a list of all the different states and the testers observers that are available in your city, or where you can go. If it's like a 2-hour radius, they make accommodations for that if there's not one directly in your city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's really good like that. And I think all of the other ones you would just Google therapy dog organizations, and the national groups will come up. And but I've been with Alliance of Therapy Dogs. I mean, my membership number is 1111. That means I was the 1,001, and now they're up to 30,000 members. So
Yeah.
they're growing. They're continually growing.
Well, it's such a win-win-win. It's a win for the patient or the individual, the high school student. It's a win for the dog. The dog gets to get out, get pets, and get out of the house for a little while, see a new environment, and then the owner has the satisfaction of seeing that relationship and the intuitiveness of the Greyhound as they react to the patient, regardless of whether it's a bedridden patient or a child in a hospital or a high school student.
Yeah, and it gives you the ability to give back to the community.
Yeah. It's a great form of community service, isn't it?
And sharing your dog with less fortunate.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't hurt the cause of Greyhound adoption. We all know that it's a great way to show lots of people what wonderful dogs they are and what the great personalities they have. So
yeah, because a lot of people think of the little guys, the little Italian Greyhounds. Oh, is that an Italian Greyhound? That's like, no, this one's on steroids. If you think this is an Italian Greyhound, and so
yeah.
But yeah, it's a great way to show off your dogs, because even in like different going into like different dog events that are different dogs and stuff, people are just blown away at how reserved your dog is. Like I had 5, and I would come into a group and maybe bring all 5 of them, and they were like, how do you handle all those dogs? And I'd have a couple of them braced, and then one not braced, but just singly, and because they just go in tandem. They get along, and it's just like you just constantly wow the people. And that's why I was always busy as an adoption rep, because I was out there doing events, and COVID just kind of blew that away here in Las Vegas anyway, as far as having group events and things like that.
Yeah.
Halloween was really fun, because I'd always dress up one of my dogs as a Greyhound bus. I'd make the costume, and they'd always win.
Yeah.
And they'd go, oh, it's Dana again with a Greyhound bus. She's going to win. And I was like, yeah, I am. So,
well, Dana, we appreciate your being with us. And, this is the first. We've had 50 some episodes now, and this is the first for therapy dogs. So we're delighted to spread the word about Greyhounds as therapy dogs, and you're certainly an expert in the field. We appreciate your joining us and sharing your experience and knowledge with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good deal. Well, Greyhound lovers, we'll I hope you join us again for the next episode, and that you've enjoyed this episode, and perhaps you've been inspired to have your Greyhound become a Greyhound. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you're not a regular listener, be sure to follow Greyhound Nation wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Grey Nation Show, follow us, and you'll get notifications every time we release a new episode. You can also get new show notifications when you subscribe to our new YouTube channel. If you liked the episode, leave us a review on our Facebook page or your favorite podcast app. You can also send us feedback or questions via the contact form on our website at greyhoundnation.dog. That's greyhoundnation.dog. This episode was produced in collaboration with host John Parker. Our theme music was composed and performed by Dimitri Taras. Thanks to Dana Provost for sharing her experiences with Greyhounds as therapy dogs. If you want to learn more about training your own Greyhound to be a therapy dog, check out our show notes for links from some of Dana's recommended certification organizations. I'm Michael Burns, and you've been listening to Greyhound Nation.